Hi there, my name is Steve Snap, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of Selling to Architects using Salesforce for Building Materials. As I mentioned in other videos, we like to look at Mark Mitchell's book on how to sell to various members of the Building Materials channel. And in this particular episode, I want to just take some of his ideas on how to sell to architects and how do we use Salesforce for Building Materials to really make that easy to do. So the first thing I want to do is just look at our basic overview of a project in Salesforce and then drill into the project relationships and identify within those relationships where we're strong and where we're weak on a particular project. So in this example, I have on my screen a project record, and I got here by clicking on the Projects tab. Now, just for a quick little background, what you see here, programs, projects, project relationships, quotes, that's all part of our Salesforce for Building Materials application. And like I said, that's where we take the ideas of the specific ways that building material manufacturers need to sell through architects and through contractors, and how do we build those capabilities into Salesforce. So in this example, I'm going to drill into our projects object, and I'm going to go ahead and open up one of our existing projects. Now, just to demystify this a little bit, this would be a project that we've identified either recently or maybe even as far as a year ago. And we may have identified that by bringing it in through Dodge, or we may have identified it by working with an architect who's starting to work on a new design. In this example, I've got this project. And in this example, I also want to look at what we call the related list, where I can see the project relationships or the project team. Now, this tab that you see here, this is showing me all of the players. It could be subcontractors, general contractors, architects that are associated with or affiliated with this project. Now I'm going to go ahead and click this View All button, which will show me all of those relationships. And one of the things that you'll notice here is that I may have subcontractors, contractors, architects, but in this example I want to talk about the architect. Now what we're doing here is we're showing that Melillo Architect is associated with this project. Now in a moment I'll show you when I go to this architect's record, I can see all of the projects that this architect is associated with. But in this example, I'm showing specifically this architect associated with this project, Bethesda, and more importantly, their status, which tells me that they've been awarded this project. So that means, status means their relationship with this project, and attitude is their attitude towards me or towards my product. Now you can see here that for the most part, most of the players on this project have a supportive attitude. So right here you'll see it says supportive, which translates to a green dot. I have a couple people that are neutral and a couple people that are opposed. The real concern here is that the architect who's been awarded this project is opposed to me. That means I've got some work to do to make sure that I can convert them from opposition to support. Now in a few minutes I'm going to go through how you can proactively target architects and how you can identify those architects that have been through your lunch and learns and other things. But in this particular example, I've got some reactive selling that I need to do because the architect's already been awarded and I know that they're opposed to me. So it's a very different conversation than working on a proactive basis to build relationships with an architect and to make sure that when the opportunity comes for them to specify my product that they're already on board. But in this particular case, I can see that they're opposed. Now I can take steps to follow up directly, in this case with Barbara Melillo, which is the key architect within the firm that's working on this. And I can do whatever I need to do to work with Barbara to get me, to get us to the place where she's supporting our product. That's what I need to do. Now in this particular example, when I do all of those efforts, I can see all of the sales activity and all the things that I'm doing to sort of convert Barbara to our side. And when I do that, I'll simply change this from supportive to, from opposed to supportive, and then you'll see that change. But I want to just transition in this conversation from kind of that reactive mode to a little bit more of the proactive part of this. So in the next segment of this episode, I want to talk about how do we manage our relationships with our architects on a proactive basis. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and click on my Project Relationships tab. And this is where I'm tracking all of the project relationships across all of my projects. Now in this particular list, I've focused in on those architects that have been awarded projects. And more importantly, I can see across all of my projects which architects have been awarded, and more importantly, I can see their attitude again. So in this example, I've got, 6 or 7 different projects. I can see the architectural firm name here, and I can see their attitude towards me. Now in the previous example, we were talking about Barbara Melillo, which I just moved from opposed to supportive. So I can now see that she's supportive of our product and she's going to be working with us to get spec'd. Now, if I'm working on a proactive basis, and I guess this isn't quite proactive because these projects have already been awarded, so it's sort of a semi-proactive basis. But if I want to look across my project relationships, across all my projects, then using a tool like this list view will enable me to do that. So I can see in this example as I'm sort of planning my activity. In the previous example, I was looking at a specific project and making sure that I was solid on it. In this example, I'm looking across multiple projects, and I can see that I have essentially 2 different architects, one that's opposed and one that's neutral. In either case, I want all of those to be green. So in this sort of next phase of what I'm doing, I'm going to be working to make sure that these people are supportive. Now, that brings us to really the most proactive part of this, and this is a thing that Mark Mitchell touches on in his book and also in a lot of his videos, where he talks about targeting specific architects and then working with those architects. In this case, I'm showing lunch and learns, but identifying those architects, and in addition to identifying them and working to make sure that we've established some kind of contact, in this case I'm showing a lunch and learn, I can also be working to make sure that I'm actually getting projects from them. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and open up my contact list, and I'm going to open up a list that we call our target architects. Now, I realize that you're not only working with architects to get lunch and learns, but the point here is I wanted to use the lunch and learn concept to at least identify those architects that we want to do business with based on their specialty, and where are we in sort of that cycle of getting them into lunch and learns. So in this example, I've got a list of architectural firms. In this case, I've got contacts within those firms. This same idea, I can look at this at the individual architect level, or I can look at the architectural firm. In either case, I can look at the people or the organizations to make sure that we're maintaining those relationships. But what this list shows me is a list of architects, and it shows the last time that they attended one of our classes. More importantly, just like we were doing with their attitude towards us, we color code those contacts or those architects based on the last time they attended a class. So in this example, you can see that someone recently attended one of our lunch and learns. They're going to show green. If someone's a little bit, maybe not, a few months ago, in this case 6 months or more, it's yellow. And if it's more than 6 months, then they're going to show red. So from a proactive point of view, if I'm targeting specific architects, I want to make sure that we're having recent contacts with them. Now, the example I show here, we were looking at a 6-month window. So if we've done a lunch and learn within 6 months, it's green, 6 to 12 months yellow, 12 months or more red. We could certainly modify that. It could be 18 months they go red, or 24 months, or it could be 1 month they go red. The point isn't that the timeline is necessarily firm. The idea is that you can define that timeline based on how often you're doing lunch and learns, or how stale or how quickly the information you train in your lunch and learn goes stale. The main idea here is that I now have a visible way of looking at my relationships and verifying where they are in the training cycle. In addition to that, I can also drill into these particular organizations and see how many projects they've sent us. So in this particular example, I'm looking at Melillo, and you can see that Melillo is associated with one project. So at the beginning of this video, I went and looked at the project to see who all the players were. Now what I'm looking at is the architect to see how many projects they're involved in. So regardless of how I come at this, what I'm doing here with Salesforce for Building Materials is I'm managing all of the details associated with that complex sales process, and I can come at it from either direction. So whether you're proactively targeting architects and you want to see which of those architects have we had recent contact with, and how many of those architects are working on projects that we want to be involved in, I can certainly manage it that way. Or I can come at it from the project side and make sure that every single player within that project is supportive of our product so that we get that business. So we're going to have other videos on this channel that talk about how to sell to contractors, more details about working with lead sources like Dodge, etc. So please stay tuned for more videos, and if you have any questions, please click the link in the description and schedule an opportunity to have a conversation, and we look forward to chatting with you further. Thank you.